Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, wherever you are. This is Mr. Shakespeare here again on the 8th of September, 2022. I'm here with remote viewer and psychic medium, Liz Cross. How are you doing today, Liz?
I am doing very well. And we have she's Lady Thatcher, isn't she?
Yeah, I believe so. Baroness, yeah, so she would be Lady Thatcher. Yeah.
Lady Thatcher, she's here. She's ready to talk. Woo, she has a lot to say.
Oh, good. So just a quick background. She was Conservative Prime Minister for England from 1979 to 1990. She pretty much changed England from the end of the 70s, that's definitely for sure, and the whole of the 80s region. And she worked quite a lot in tandem with Ronald Reagan, who was the president in the 80s in the States. But anyway, so she's the longest serving Prime Minister for over 150 years, and she was the first female British Prime Minister. And the reason why we're doing this today is because we now have a second female Prime Minister in Liz Truss. So,
actually number 3.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yes. Yeah, I know, but everybody forgets about Theresa May. She was such a non-event.
Yes. Yeah.
She was so, I don't know what happened with Theresa May. She wasn't great. But anyway, we won't put our personal opinions in. But yeah, she's actually number 3, Liz Truss. And
right. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
No. Lady Thatcher's here rubbing her hands together. She can't wait to dive into this one. I tell you, I could just feel this is going to be good already. Now, I know that this may spark some controversy, as you say in the UK, controversy here in the USA. However, we feel that, or certainly Mr. Shakespeare feels that she has a lot of information to give us. I know that a lot of people do not like Maggie Thatcher, and and I understand that. So she was very controversial. She made some hardline decisions, which of course nobody will ever be happy all of the time, and all hell broke loose. If you want to know about what happened in the UK during that time, you should all be watching The Crown, right? The Crown series, which documented the royal family throughout, certainly Queen Elizabeth's reign. And there is a long part in there about Maggie Thatcher, and it's excellent. It shows what was going on in the country. So if you do want to understand that, certainly from the American point of view, you should all be watching The Crown. Seriously, it's excellent. Okay, so without further ado, Mr. Shakespeare, please take it away.
Okay, thanks for that, Liz.
Yeah. He says in his most sarcastic tone. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if you're a spokesperson for the Netflix network or something.
Yeah, well, yes, yes. Not only am I psychic medium, but I'm chief correspondent for The Crown. Seriously, it's
that's actually the 3rd time that you've pumped that program. Did you know that?
Yeah, but it really, listen, Americans, they love the royal family. That most of them do. They love everything about the royal family. And I think The Crown brings about that understanding, because obviously being British, we have that in-depth knowledge of the royal family. Listen, the royal family in the UK, there's a large, percentage of the population that hate them. And of course, Americans would never understand really why. And a lot of British people wouldn't understand why. But The Crown is such a historical masterpiece. So you can understand, like, what number prime minister is Liz Truss for the Queen? Which number is it? I mean, she's had so many prime ministers since she's been crowned, since she's been queen. And, I don't know. So she just goes through them all, and it's interesting. You should definitely watch it.
Okay, thanks again for the next update. We will now return you to your previous programming.
that was our commercial break. Okay, sorry about that.
Right. So, shall we start, or did you want to mention anything else?
No, let's start.
Okay, right. What does Margaret Thatcher think of the latest incumbent to the office of Prime Minister, namely Liz Truss?
What do you think about Liz Truss? I'm very surprised by this answer. A total disaster. I really thought that with Liz Truss being female, Maggie Thatcher was the first female. I thought that there would be some, really momentum and cheering her on, but no, it's a disaster.
Okay. Why is it a disaster? She's only been in office a couple of days.
Because she doesn't know what she's doing, she says.
Okay, she's not the first person to say that. That's already coming out over here on quite a lot of the news outlets that she's clueless. But time will tell. I've got to give her a chance, I think. Does she believe...
Sorry, lady, Lady Thatcher, she likes to cut in. Lady Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, is saying she's never run a business before. And that's like a fundamental thing of being able to be prime minister, whether the business is small or whether it's a large conglomerate. You have to know how to run a business. And this is where her knowledge will fail her.
Well, Boris Johnson's never run a business either, did he?
And he failed. She said, and he failed.
Okay. In fact, there's not many politicians who have ever run businesses. It's not something... Thatcher was quite unique in that she actually had been in a business. But most politicians are career politicians and have never lived in the outside the state world, so to speak.
But she says that is what made her such a strong prime minister, is the fact that she had that business background of running a business. And it's fundamental. And her personal thought, feeling, and opinion, right? Not Liz, but her. She says that is fundamental to running a country because you're running a business.
Okay. While she was prime minister, she had to make some very difficult decisions.
Very true.
And as a result of a lot of those difficult decisions, some of which were wildly unpopular, she was given the nickname of the Iron Lady. How does she think that Liz Truss will deal with the difficult decisions? Because there's lots of difficult decisions that Liz Truss will have to make in the upcoming months.
That's a great question. How do you feel
Thank you.
Liz Truss will deal with it? She can't make any decisions. That's her problem.
Okay, so who's going to be making the decisions for her then?
Who will be making the decisions for her? No one. It'll be a knee-jerk reaction based upon the collective thought.
Which means that she could be swayed every which way but loose.
Exactly. That's her weakness. According to Thatcher, that's her weakness, is the fact that she's too vulnerable to persuasion.
Would Britain have been better served there was only two at the end, Rishi Sunak. Would Britain have been better served if he had won?
No, he's hopeless as well. What do you think about the opposition, Steimer? She thinks he's she's laughing. when I said his name, is it Steimer?
Starmer, yeah.
Starmer? She was laughing when I said that. She was like, good grief, She thinks the Labour Party's finished.
Okay, but the Conservative Party has not been doing very conservative things recently that we would traditionally associate with the Conservative Party. It's been almost, doing things that the Labour Party would do. Is there any difference between the two?
Not really. But she believes that the leadership from the Labour Party is just a disaster waiting to happen. Everybody is moving back towards sort of a united stance. They're trying to put England first again. That's the only way they're going to get through this economic issue.
Right, but I mean, she was a sovereigntist. She believed in the sovereignty of the United Kingdom. She wasn't very happy with the European Union. But, there are lots of people, the globalists. And what does she think of the World Economic Forum and what they're up to?
What do you think about the World Economic Forum? She's laughing again. What do you think about them? They're a joke. How could anybody possibly believe anything that they put out?
Well, what they're put out is relentlessly spun in the media globally.
What they put out is relentlessly spun in the media globally. She just said, I wish I was back there to take control. I would get Britain through this crisis. What they put out in the media is just spun. What they put out is spun by the media. She's like, you can't trust the media at all.
No, but globally, the media seems to have got worse today, nowadays, since compared to when she was in power.
Yeah, because she's saying that's true. She can hear you, by the way. So if anybody's wondering like why I'm not reiterating the questions all the time, it's because she can actually hear. That's the thing, the beauty of spirit. They can always hear us. You just need a psychic medium to talk to them, right? To get their information back. They don't have a body. They don't have vocal cords or a mouth, or, you know what I mean? So, but spirit can always hear you. So I'm sorry, please go ahead with that question again.
I said, what did I say? Yeah, I said the quality of the media and the control, what they're doing now is far worse than what they did when she was in power.
That's true. She says that's true. And that's because they've been allowed to.
Right. But it's been successive governments globally, not just in England, but in America and the European Union and everything that have allowed or wanted this to happen. How does it get reversed?
She actually disagrees with you. She believes that the governments would never want this to happen. But it's just that the media have unlimited funding and the government has no control over their own PR anymore.
Yeah, but the government has unlimited power compared to them. I mean, it's governments that start wars, it's governments that do all sorts of things. Medias don't in the same way. So governments can, if they wanted to.
Governments can if they wanted to. No, because that's a very unpopular decision. Then it looks like we're trying to mind control the people. It's a very intricate process, she's saying. And she's saying that it would just look very, very bad. It looks like it's undemocratic if you start trying to control the media. However, this has gotten out of complete control. It makes sense, actually, what she just said.
Okay. What does she think of the current status and situation of the European Union as an entity?
What do you think about it? It's in decline.
Does she have any thoughts on the current European leader, Ursula, another female, Ursula von Leyen?
She's pretty much just doing as she's told. She's also not a decision maker.
No.
Will the EU remain in existence? it will remain in existence for the foreseeable future. Eventually it will fall apart. But certainly for now, the EU will remain in existence. It will get to the point, because she's saying we're at this junction now, right? Where we're starting to realize the pendulum is starting to swing the other way. We're starting to realize that sovereignty over our nations is the best way to govern, right? So Germany's in charge of Germany, the UK is in charge of the UK. So, because if you don't, it leads to these international crises of, the gas and the oil supply, the energy, the food. She's saying very much so that countries have to be self-sufficient. And the companies that are in the UK should be British companies that are running, the power, the electricity, the water, the treatment plants, everything, the infrastructure. That should all be done by British companies. And because the UK has done away with a lot of that, privatized it out for the sake of, earning a quick pound or a quick buck, as we say, it's coming back to bite them.
Right, but she was one of the chief protagonists of privatization in the 80s.
Yes, but it was privatization to British companies.
Right. Oh, I see. Now, what she's talking about is now the control of the ownership of those companies, right?
Yes.
We have companies owning our water and all sorts of things, yeah. Okay.
And you can exercise more power and control. Now she's saying they can just leave and the whole infrastructure just breaks down.
Right.
This is a disaster on many, many levels. And she's saying it's not just the UK. I feel like, what else are you saying? She's shown me the map and she's like pointing to different countries and she's like the USA too. Canada, not so much, but certainly the USA, the UK, we've just handed over our power for the sake of cheap goods. And she believes that we shouldn't have done that.
Okay.
It makes sense, actually, what she's saying.
Yeah. What does she think of the situation concerning China, which seems to be on everybody's lips at the moment? Has she any thoughts or words about that? China has developed quite a lot since she was Prime Minister.
What do you believe about China? She would have never have allowed that, right? She said they should have been held accountable. Do you believe that the big V word, because we can't say that, right? Or we'll get taken down, was a bioweapon? She actually believes that the V word was a bioweapon. Now, that's her own personal thought, feeling, and opinion. They should have been held accountable for that. Sanctions should have been put on them until reasonable inquiries were made.
Right.
She's not happy at the way things are going. And she says, but what can I do? Right. And that's true too. Like, what can I do? But how do you see the UK faring in the next few years? Listen, this is consistent with some of the other information we've got. It's going to take a very, very long time to climb out of this deep hole that the UK have gotten themselves in. And she's saying, and the Americans too. She believes that the Americans, she's saying you need strong leadership. Do you believe Trump was a strong leader? And she actually says, no, she does not believe Trump was a strong leader. He was too knee-jerk reactive. She doesn't like knee-jerk reactions. She never involved her emotions in her decisions. And she says that's rule number one of running a country, right? You don't involve your emotions. You have to set your emotions aside and say, well, what is best for the population? And do you believe that Trump did that? No, she doesn't believe Trump did that either.
Does she believe Biden's doing that? What does she think of Biden?
What do you think of Biden? She actually likes Biden more than Trump. Interesting, huh? I knew this was going to be an interesting life review or interesting interview. Why do you like Biden more than Trump? Because he's easy to reason with. And that was another failure of Trump's. The fact that he was not diplomatic. Now, a lot of people like that about Trump, that he wasn't diplomatic. But however, from her point of view, it was a disaster on the world stage, going around dictating to people. And she believes that if Trump was in power now, we would have fully been involved in World War III.
Right.
That's actually probably very true.
Okay. But I mean, Biden's been a career politician all his life. He's never run a business, not an official one, whereas Trump has.
That's true as well. So Biden has never run a business, but Trump has. She actually believes that Biden, as a career politician, has been quite competent. And this is very bizarre coming from her, right? I mean, it just is, because you would think that she would always side with the Republicans. And she's telling me, no, that's not the case. I will side with whoever is fair and competent.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Let me ask her this question. Have your views changed? Have your earthly views changed now that you were in the spirit world? And she said no.
Right. Okay. All right. Was there any regrets that she has, specifically while she was Prime Minister?
Were there any regrets that you had specifically while you were Prime Minister? She felt like things were out of control. Here you go about the media again. She says she felt at times she allowed the media to control her instead of her controlling the media, right? Her being able to make decisions without the media input. And that is the failing of all these leaders today. They're controlled by the media. They're not making clear decisions. They're wondering, what does this paper say? What does that paper say? What does this anchor say on the you know what I mean? And she says, you've got to completely switch off. And she wished that she would have just turned the media off and made her decisions without any input from them whatsoever.
Right. Okay. Okay. What does she think of the current energy policy that the UK is adopting? Because we are very much not, nor is the European Union, energy independent.
What do you think about the current policy? Because we are not, the UK is not energy, independent. She's like, that's a huge mistake. And I think what will happen is, she's telling me, is that this is the time where you will see the UK taking back control. Again, it's not just the UK. It's going to be many other countries as well. Everybody's realized their mistake, and it's to their detriment. So you're going to see Germany taking back control. You're going to see the UK taking back control. America is going to start taking back some of its control, right? We're all getting the big lesson that we can't outsource everything. It just doesn't work, especially to world leaders who could care less about our countries and only care about our demise. See, she's actually, this is interesting what she's telling me. She's like, we went into this thinking that they all had our best interests because we all have their best interests, right? So we're judging them based upon our own moral standards. But that wasn't the case at all. Now we're understanding that it was just lip service, that they had absolutely no intention of just being a supplier and doing business. This was all about taking over power and being able to hold us. And she's like, grab us by the you know what's it, right? She's showing me that. I'm like, good grief, she's a tough woman. And now they've got us, right? And she's saying, and now this is a lesson. And over time, we're going to start taking back our power. This is why the UK is, this is why, sorry, not the UK, sorry, the EU. Sorry, this is why the EU will start to fall apart.
Right.
Do you believe that France, Germany, and Italy will leave the European Union? Eventually they will.
Right.
It'll have to break apart. Now, again, she's saying it's not in the near-term future. She's talking about, maybe 2 or 3 decades out. It may not even, she just pointed to me. She says, it may not even be in your lifetime, Liz, but it will break apart. It's totally irrelevant.
Well,
is the euro going to survive? I don't even know if the euro is going to survive. I don't think it will if it breaks up. Are you saying when it breaks apart, they'll go back to their local currencies? The euro will not survive.
Okay. What does she think of? I know these were not around when she was prime minister, but what does she think of cryptocurrencies?
That's a good question. We have to ask, don't we? What do you think about cryptocurrencies? Wow, her answers are really surprising to me. What? Confirm that. It's the way forward.
Wow.
Her answers are very shocking, aren't they?
Well, no, I sort of get that because she is an independent person, ran a business and everything. I sort of, this is for the people. So yeah, I can get it in the same way as I got Steve Jobs yesterday because he made things and cryptos are not real compared to an iPhone, if you see what I mean.
Yes, that's true. I was shocked by that because I would have thought cryptos were anti-government. And are they? Do you believe
necessarily? No.
Oh, do you believe cryptos are anti-government? No. She says they're government enforced. So is that what's coming? Yes. She believes that they will be enforced by the government. So therefore, it's in the government's best interest, she says, to control and regulate the cryptos. Right now, it's just a runaway train.
Yeah, which is pretty much true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What does she think of Elon Musk?
Ooh, what do you think of Elon Musk? See, her answers are just astonishing to me. She says a very astute businessman, knows exactly what he's doing.
Okay. What does she think of President Macron of France?
What do you think about that? She said, I wouldn't even talk to him. God, she's very
She's very forthright.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Does she believe there's going to be a food shortage globally, or in regions, or in specific countries, or what's happening on the food front?
Do you believe there's going to be a food shortage? No. In her opinion, that's just media hype. Again, that's where the media is mind controlling people. So, you know, when I think of food shortage, I think that for me, when I talk about food shortages, I'm like, I'll go to the grocery store and, you know, maybe a certain product isn't available. I think when other people are talking about food shortages, it's like the shelves are completely empty. There's no food to be had anywhere, right? She's saying that won't happen. And I'm saying, but what about my opinion or my feeling of food shortage? And she says, yes, that will happen. But as far as like these mass shortages where nobody can acquire food, that won't happen.
So there's a lot of fear mongering around based on that, isn't there?
Yes, and that's how you're controlled. You're controlled by fear.
Yeah, well, that's always been the way. Fear. If you're in fear of something, you're controlled by that.
But some fears are not irrational. But she says this fear is definitely irrational.
Okay. Does she see any future for electric vehicles?
Do you see any future for electric vehicles? None whatsoever.
Why? What's the problem?
Too difficult to maintain.
Mm-hmm. So does she mean because the cost of the part of the batteries, or what has she any idea about that?
What do you mean by that? Too difficult to maintain. I don't think I think what she's telling me is they're not going to be reliable.
Oh.
They're not reliable at all. They're on a mass scale. If everybody swaps over to electric vehicles, or certainly the majority of the population, you can't sustain that. The amount of power it would take to charge all of these vehicles on top of all the power that we're using already, you would have to have rolling blackouts or brownouts. She corrected me. You wouldn't be able to sustain the amount of power it would take to keep these vehicles charged.
Right.
Do you see a problem with the batteries? Yes, there is a major problem with the batteries too. They're too expensive to produce. I feel like producing them at the moment, she's telling me, like they're getting a lot of government assistance to produce these batteries right now. Is that true? I did not know that.
Yeah, they're subsidized heavily.
Okay. That's not sustainable. I did not know that. That is not sustainable. That is a recipe for disaster. You cannot, and if you're talking about, you know, and this is only just to make a few right now, if you're talking about making the whole of the European Union area electric vehicles, it won't be able to cope. The system, the grids, it just can't cope with that. This has not been very well thought
out. Moving across to Canada, what does she think of Justin Trudeau?
She likes him.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting? I'll tell you, this interview is full of surprises. Why do you like Trudeau? Because she thinks he's a good man at heart. She believes he's making decisions. They may not be the right decisions at the time, but his decisions are made with the people in mind, the safety of the people. Now, people may not like those decisions. And she says, nobody will like all the decisions all the time, but it's what's inside that counts for her. Now that she's in spirit, right? She can see this, and she believes that was it to do with power and control. She doesn't believe it had anything to do with power and control, the lockdowns in Canada. She believes that it came straight from the heart, that he was trying to do the best that he could. A lot of people are going to disagree with that answer. I completely understand that, and bring on the hate mail. That's all I can say. But make sure you address it to Maggie Thatcher, not Liz. Voice your concerns to her. Because I know when that was going on, that was a huge topic that we were covering. But that's what she sees. He's too emotionally reactive as well.
Okay. One of her most famous quotes that has been repeated time and time again is, and I'll quote it now, she said, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money.
That's true. She says that's true. And this is all to do with self-sufficiency, which we have demonstrated even on a large scale. Giving away your self-sufficiency does not work.
Right. Okay. How does she feel? How does she feel that? What does she feel the future holds for the UK over the next year or two?
What do you feel the future holds for the UK over the next year or two? It's going to be a disastrous few years. People are going to be poor. Yes. She's saying it's going to take at least 5 years to recover.
What does she think of the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon?
What do you think about the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon? She's a joke. She wants to say we're free and we're independent. But unfortunately, she says that's not the case. So again, this is more lip service. Will Scotland break away from the UK? No. Will Wales break away from the UK? No, they have to have the UK. They have to.
Yeah.
Here's a joke question. Will Cornwall break away from the UK? She thought that was funny. Because, you know, the Cornish are like, free Cornwall. She thought that was funny.
There's a lot of farmers up in arms at the moment about draconian things that governments are trying to do to take their farms away, and there's been lots of protests. It's not covered much on the mainstream at all, but they are there. They're covering, the protests are in Holland or in Italy, they're in France as well. Why does she think that governments are trying to take away farmland from farmers?
To control the output. What do you mean by control the output? She says so they can designate rationing. I don't understand that.
Well, food, if they weaponize food and don't let you have it, and they ration it to you, you'll do more of what the government says.
Oh, okay. Good grief. Is that what they're doing? They're trying to weaponize food? She agrees with you. Yes. She believes that that's a capability that they would like to have. and they can ration it. They can control how it's grown. But I'm saying, but how can the government aren't farmers? No, but they're looking to take over and then employ the farmers so that the farms are actually government owned and government controlled. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but farmers owning their own land, why would they want to then give it or sell it to the government to then become a tenant on their own land again? Because they lose their rights, so they're a tenant, they're not an owner. I mean, this is quite insidious. This is going on in quite a few places, especially in Europe. I mean, and it's being kept away from the mainstream news deliberately.
That is incredible, actually. But why do they need to control the farmers because why? She says that she believes, right? Her own personal thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. She believes that they're going to try to go organic.
Okay, but again, government are not farmers. They don't know how to run or do anything like this.
Well, yeah. But the government doesn't. But they'll find a way. Anything's possible. And that way they're mass producing, they're mass producing the food, and they can dictate what happens to that food. I feel like, are we moving into a stage of, let me ask her this. Are we moving into a stage of vegan and vegetarianism? Ultimately, we will end up moving into a state of vegetarian, maybe even vegan, because further on down the line, what she's telling me, maybe 100 years out, we won't be able to produce meat on the scale that it's being produced. So you're not going to see the cow farms. You're not going to see the chicken farms. That's something that if you want to do, you will be doing it on your own, right? You will have your own chickens if you want to slaughter chickens. But as far as this mass farming, of animals, that's going to stop.
Okay.
Will we still be able to fish? No. She's saying, no, we're not going to be able to fish because the fish supply is so low that it's going to take decades to, reinstate that mass supply. Again, she's saying that the government has to have some form of control if, in the long term. And she says they will take over control, but in the long term, they will, take control over the food supply.
Right.
Just remember, folks, you heard it here first. And that's not the first time we've come across that. So I did a viewing, and the video's lost in the ether, but those of you that have been following me know. I did a viewing of 200 years out, and that viewing was actually, food was rationed. If we wanted anything extra, we had to grow it on our own. There were no dairy farms. There were no beef farms. They'd done away with a lot of the cow population. It was very well controlled. Goat farming as well. All of that. And this is basically confirming how we're moving into the future. Is this the start of it? She believes that this is the start. And gradually over time, you will see heavy regulations. And I mean, farmers are regulated already, but heavy regulations on farming. So she says you have to farm smarter, not harder.
Is this a global thing, or is it just an EU thing, or will America be affected? I mean,
is this a global thing? In order to sustain the human race, it will end up being mostly a global thing.
Okay.
What happens if we all become vegetarians? Then what happens? Then you're going to see the lifespan increasing. So you're going to see more people living out to 120, 125 years. And that's just by cutting out meat and cutting out, because once you start cutting out the meat, you're going to start seeing a reduction over time of processed food, right? If the government is in control, and I'm saying, but are they going to like do these dry freeze packets or anything like that? And yes, some of it will be dry freeze. You know what I'm talking about? You know, like it's weird. Oh, gross. But what about, you know, further on down the line, it'll all be fresh food. And that is good for the government as well, because then the government is not forking out all this money on healthcare. That's another reason the government wants to take control of the food eventually.
Right. Okay. The British pound is not doing very well at the moment globally, especially measured against the dollar. How does she see that progressing?
The British pound is not doing well. It will continue to get worse.
Will it reach parity with the dollar 1-for-1?
Will it reach parity with the dollar 1-for-1? Will it actually go down 1-for-1? No, but it'll get really close.
When would that be? When would that happen?
Next year.
Okay. In the beginning, the middle, spring, summer, winter, when?
When next year? The winter next year? Winter? No, I think maybe just like around, well, so there's confliction here because your winter is longer than my winter, right? So around early spring for me. So early spring is around March.
Right. Well, that's yeah.
Don't give it that. Don't give it that, Mr. Shakespeare. You know as well as I do. It's cold, and it could be very cold in June.
Well, depends where you are, but yes.
Oh yeah, I've worn a winter coat in July in Scotland.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. That's Scotland. That's quite far north, isn't it? Still. Okay. What was the other thing I wanted to ask? Will gold and silver ever return to being money again?
No.
Are gold and silver worth even investing in? Physical gold, physical silver.
Physical gold worth investing in? Yes.
Okay. What does she think of the current situation in the Middle East?
What do you think about current situation in the Middle East? What do you think about current situation in the Middle East? They're controlling us.
Sorry, I missed that. They're what?
They're controlling us.
They are controlling us.
Yes.
How are they doing that?
We're too dependent upon them. We're nothing compared to them. So she's saying we have to appease them at all times.
Okay.
I'll tell you what's just come in. Lots of people are worried about the health of the Queen. So let's ask her. Let's ask her about the Queen, because she knew the Queen personally. You know, the Queen, the royals, everybody's gone racing up to Balmoral at the moment. What's going on with the Queen? She's resting. Okay, she's resting at the moment. Is she going to make a recovery? No. So is she going to pass away soon? Relatively soon. Is it going to be now? We should anticipate it, that it will happen soon. Will Charles be king? Yes, he will. So there you go. Anything else for?
No, I think we've covered a broad spectrum of questions with Lady Thatcher. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. She says, anytime you can consult me on any matter. She enjoyed this. So thank you very much. She did. She likes being consulted. That hasn't happened before. So we're the first ones to channel Maggie Thatcher to find out the current state of affairs. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mags and Co. And thank you, Mr. Shakespeare.